Welcome to the newest episode of Head Speaks, your home of all things geeky. I am your host, Aaron Brotherhead Moss. Let the show begin. Hey, dear listeners, Brother Ed here, and today I bring you episode 83 of Head Speaks. First of all, I want to thank you all very much for listening, and I want to give special thanks to our Patreon subscribers out there, the big dollar donators. We have Big Danny Cool and Sean Adams. Thank you both very much for being supporters of the show and the Headcast Network in general. I appreciate you guys. To join these two wonderful guys, you can join us over at patreon.com/Headcast Network. Throw a few bucks in the tin and you can join up. But let's go ahead and get moving on with today's show. As I said, this is episode 83, and today, again, as usual, I'm not sure what I'm going to do each day or each episode. It kind of depends on how much time I have and what's going on. So I know we are going to start today with welcome to Retrospective of the 80s. So last time I did one of these, our old random wheel generator pulled up the year 1983, which works since this is episode 83. I didn't plan it like that. It just came out. But anyways, so 1983. Let's talk a little about 1983. I get this information from Wikipedia. And at first, I'm going to go ahead and look at the important events of the year from my perspective. There's a lot more going on than what I'm going to read off. But again, I don't want to be a 5-hour show, so I just handpick some things either I knew about or for some reason resonates with me. And again, as I'm stupid American, most is going to be involved with stuff from America. So let's take a look. So in 1983, 83 saw both the official beginning of the internet and the first mobile cellular telephone call. So January 1st, the migration of the ARPANET to TCP/IP is officially completed, which is considered the beginning of the true internet. Wow, 1983. The final episode of the TV series MASH, entitled Goodbye, Farewell, and Amen, airs on CBS on February the 28th to a total audience of 121.6 million people. And I was one of them. I remember watching that finale, and that was a very tearjerker ending. I really enjoyed that. It was very sentimental. It's a good ending to a great show. And what I'm going to say, if you want more about MASH, friend of the network, I think it's Rob Kelly, has MASHcast over on the Fire and Water Network. Check it out. March 9th, the 3D printer is invented by Chuck Hull. I didn't realize the 3D printer was that old, but I guess so, huh? Interesting. April 4th, the Space Shuttle Challenger is launched on its maiden voyage, and I guess it was the STS-6. April 18th, the 1983 United States embassy bombing in Beirut killed 63 people. Also that day, we go from bombing people to the Disney Channel launching in the United States. I remember getting that on cable back probably around that time. Yeah, that'd make sense. Yeah, I remember my mom getting Disney Channel on our cable package. I remember Mouser Size and all those old Mickey Mouse cartoons. I loved the old Mickey Mouse channel. It was fantastic. The Disney Channel, loved it. June 18th, Sally Ride becomes the first female American astronaut in space when she launches on board Challenger's STS-7 mission together with 4 male crewmates. This one doesn't really mean a lot to me because I didn't watch it, but I know a lot of people are fond of it and familiar with it. July 11th, Reading Rainbow debuts on PBS with LeVar Burton. I never did watch Reading Rainbow. I was 13 at this time, so I was a little old. I think it was a little older than their target demographics, and I was already reading and big fan of books anyway. So yeah, I missed this, but I know my wife's mentioned it, and I've heard a lot of other people mention Reading Rainbow. Reading Rainbow. Anyways, July 15th, Nintendo's family computer, also known as the Famicom, goes on sale in Japan, which would a couple years down the road would lead to the Nintendo being in the United States. September 19th, Press Your Luck premieres on CBS. I remember watching that show. I enjoyed Press Your Luck. October 13th, the world's first commercial mobile cellular telephone call is made in Chicago in the United States. And then an unknown date, the meteorological 1982 through 1983 El Nino event causes severe weather worldwide. So those are the major news stories of the year for 1983. Again, there was a lot more, but these are the things that either I knew about or affected me or just stood out to me. If I missed something you want to hear about, send me an email to retrospective@headspeaks.com. Again, retrospective@headspeaks.com, and I can read your responses on the air. Now let's move on to the births of 1983. Again, a lot more than what I'm reading off. These are the ones that I know of or mean something to me. Emily Blunt, born February 23rd. Mila Kunis, August 14th. I know Mila from That 70s Show, and then she was also in The Great and Powerful Oz, amongst other things. Those things I remember her best from. Adrienne Palacki. She's supposed to be Wonder Woman in a canceled show. She was Lady J in the second G.I. Joe movie. She was born May the 6th. Spider-Man himself, Andrew Garfield, born August the 20th. A fellow, in quotes, Avenger. Well, this next one is Avenger. While Spider-Man, depends on where you look at. In the comics he was, but Andrew never was. Anyways, Chris Hemsworth, August 11th. Wow, it's weird to think that both Andrew Garfield and Chris Hemsworth are the same age. They're just like weeks apart in birth. And I know Andrew Garfield, his Spider-Man movie came out several years back, so I mean he would be older. But yeah, I don't think of Andrew Garfield and Chris being the same age. It's weird. Kate Mara, a beautiful woman, wonderful actress, born February the 27th. Donald Glover, September 25th. Donald Glover, a lot of people are familiar or fans with him. I know I've seen him in things. Best thing I can think of offhand, and I know people are yelling at their phones or whatever they're listening to me on right now. You know, you're an idiot, Aaron, but I know him best from probably the Tom Holland Spider-Man, the first one, No Way Home, I think it was. No, Homecoming, as Miles' uncle, Aaron. He's been a lot of other things. He's been in commercials for... I've seen him on TV on commercials for maybe Allstate. Maybe he's in the Allstate. Maybe he's the new Jake from State Farm. Anyways, Donald Glover was born September 25th. Also, this year, Henry Cavill was born May 5th. Again, yeah, wow, it's hard to imagine that Henry Cavill was born in 83. He seems older, but I know he's not, but wow. Also, this year, Adam Driver was born November 19th. Again, I know he's been in a lot of different films. Again, I know him best from Star Wars as Kylo Ren. Lex Luthor. Well, again, pseudo Lex Luthor. I didn't care for his Lex Luthor. But anyways, Jesse Eisenberg, October 5th. I know Jesse Eisenberg best. I enjoyed him best in Zombieland movies. He did a great job there. And also, I forgot, I added this later, January 24th was Frankie Grande. I only know him. I know he's Ariana Grande's brother, and he was in a Disney, I think it was Disney show, Henry Danger, my son watches. The reason because he's been watching that one recently. He's watched this episode with Frankie, whatever, Grande in it, in the musical episode for the Henry Danger. So those are the births that I wanted to mention. We had some deaths. Again, there's a lot of deaths, but the only ones I'm going to mention. First one is Tennessee Williams. He died of asphyxia. David Niven. I know David Niven is a old school actor. I can't think of that offhand, but I know I've seen him in lots of different movies back growing up. His cause of death was motor neuron disease. And Karen Carpenter of the Carpenter fame. Her cause of death was congestive heart failure. Again, there's a lot more deaths, but those are the ones that when I'm looking through the list of people that stick out to me, people I either know of or wanted to mention. As we all know, I'm a giant geek, a big comic book geek. So let's move on to the comic events of the year. These are no specific month. Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird found Mirage Studios, which is headquartered at Northampton, Massachusetts. And Mirage Studios is where we got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from. Before it came over to Archie and became more kiddified, it was a black and white book, and it was kind of a homage, I guess, to Daredevil. Because again, Daredevil was hit by chemicals. In the Turtles universe, these chemicals seep down into the sewer and transform the Turtles into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Daredevil, his mentor was Stick, and the Turtles' mentor was Splinter. And Daredevil fought the Hand. Meanwhile, the Turtles fought the Foot Clan. So again, a lot of references. between the two, because again, Turtles was intended as a kind of a homage or a parody or something of the Daredevil series. But this is the year that they got started, at least the studios got started. Turtles came out shortly hereafter. Chicago-based First Comics makes a strong entry into the publishing field, penning out 4 ongoing titles: American Flag, E-Man, John Sable Freelance, and Warp, featuring the talents of such established creators as Howard Chaykin, Mike Grell, Frank Bruner, and Joe Staton. And again, I remember I've seen American Flag and John Sable. I've seen ads and the books on the shelves. I've never really read any of them. But again, I'm familiar with Howard Chaykin, Mike Grell, not familiar with Frank Bruner offhand, and then Joe Staton. I know Joe Staton's always mentioned over on the Fire and Water Network. Also sometime this year, DC Comics acquires most of Charlton Comics' action heroes, superhero characters, including Blue Beetle, Captain Atom, and The Question, from the failing publisher. Little Archie, published since 1956, is discontinued. Sad news. Let's go on to specific events. February, Wonder Woman 300, a special anniversary issue written by Rory Thomas, Danette Thomas, and Dan Mishkin. In March, Archie Comics revives its Red Circle Comics superhero imprint with Mighty Crusaders #1. Again, this is before I really got into comics, but I know that later on, Impact Comics would revive these characters through, I think it was DC, an imprint of DC. So I'm more familiar with their revival, but this is when they got started. April, The Legion of Superheroes Volume 2, number 298, features an insert previewing the upcoming Amethyst Princess of Genworld series, written by Dan Mishkin and Gary Cohen, and artist Ernie Cohen. In May, Jason Todd makes his debut as the second Robin in Detective Comics 526. In there, Jason Todd was basically just a clone of Dick Grayson. I believe he had blonde hair, but they ended up dyeing it black to make him look like Robin, and it was very much just a carbon copy of Dick. And then later on, several years down the road, after the crisis, DC would restart Batman, basically, and they would give Jason more of a punk kid attitude. Not punk rocker, but just, not stuck up, but a troubled kid, I guess. But this would be the original Jason Todd. In June, Action Comics 544, that was 544, was a 68-page anniversary issue with the origins of the revamped Lex Luthor by Cary Bates and Kurt Swan, and Brainiac by Marv Wolfman and Gil Kane. And I think I used to have that comic, if I'm not mistaken. I got a box of, as I mentioned before, either here or elsewhere. Back in the day, I got a big box of old comics from a friend, and I think that was one of them that was in there. Legion of Superheroes 300, a 68-page anniversary issue. The cover features the Legionnaires drawn by over 20 separate artists. Wow. With issue 124, DC publishes the final issue of its supernatural war comic, Weird War Tales. Marvel 2-in-1 with issue 100 is canceled by Marvel, which was replaced the following month by the new title, The Thing. And Marvel 2-in-1 was basically a Thing crossover book, or a team-up book. Not crossover, but team-up. It would have the Thing in each issue teaming up with another character. Now that's at 100 issues and was canceled this month. And then the following month, it was replaced by the new title called The Thing, just his own solo title for a while. July, the first issue of Frank Miller's Ronin, limited series, published by DC Comics. Geek confession, I don't think I've ever read Ronin. I know Frank Miller, I've read a lot of his work, but Ronin's something I never seeked out to read. I may have to change that at some point. I may have to read that. With issue 200, DC publishes the final issue of The Brave and the Bold, which also features a preview insert for the new Batman and the Outsiders. Again, The Brave and the Bold was a Batman team-up book. I had a lot of issues of those. In September, with issue 503, DC ceases publishing Adventure Comics, which has been running consistently since November of 1938. In October, The House of Mystery with issue 321 is canceled by DC. A lot of cancellations this year. The Comet, #1 of a planned 6-issue limited series published by Red Circle Comics. The Black Hood with issue 3 is canceled by Red Circle. And again, I know the Comet and the Black Hood, as I said earlier, when it was part of the Impact line several years down the road. And the Impact line, which I believe was through DC Comics, released them. I enjoyed those. Star Wars Return of the Jedi by Archie Goodwin, Al Williamson, and Carlos Garzón came out. in October of this year. November. Let's see what I did in November. Bill, getting ahead of myself. Walt Simonson makes his debut as the writer-artist on Thor with issue 337 and introduces the character Beta Ray Bill. December. The first issue of Marvel's Magic, which was a limited series starring Storm and Liliana, was written by Chris Claremont, came out. Lancelot Strong, The Shield, with issue 3 is retitled Shield Still Sterling, again by Red Circle Comics. And The Comet, which is a planned 6-issue limited series, is canceled with issue 2. Wow. So apparently they weren't that popular when they came out, because they only lasted a few issues each, especially The Comet was only a 6-issue miniseries, but only made 2 issues before it was canceled. So these are some comics that premiered this year. They had number ones that first came out this year in 1983. Batman the Outsiders, The Omega Men. And again, like I said before, I wasn't reading these comics. I wasn't into comics at the time, but I did read a lot of these. I remember reading Batman the Outsiders. I picked up the end of that one because it was going on during Millennium, I believe it was. And I picked up those. I know Omega Men is where Lobo first appeared. I never really read that series, but I do know that Lobo appeared in that series. Alpha Flight. Picked that one up on and off over the years. Marvel Age, which is kind of like a news comic, talking about Marvel publications and behind the scenes and stuff like that. I had some of those. I like that. It was a good series. New Mutants, as mentioned previously, The Thing. Badger also came out. So that's the comic news. Again, if I missed anything you wanted to mention, that you want me to mention, if I missed a series that you liked that premiered this year, or it was canceled, or whatever else it may be, definitely let me know. Again, you can send me an email to comics@headspeaks.com. Again, comics@headspeaks.com, and I can read it on the air. Now let's go and move over to movies. These are the highest grossing movies per Wikipedia for 1983. So Return of the Jedi was the number one highest grossing movie. Of course, I saw that one, loved it. That made, at the time, $309 million. Wow, which beat out number 2, which was in Tears of Endearment, which only made $108 million. Wow, Return of the Jedi was a monster. Of course, it was a great movie. Flashdance was number 3 at $92 million. Trading Places was at $90 million. Again, love Trading Places. Great movie. Love that one. War Games, and I forgot to write down how much that one made. But War Games is number 5, another great movie. I loved War Games. I was going to do the top 5, but I decided to go on because number 6 is interest to my friend Jared Albrecht over on the Longbox Crusade network. Octopussy, a James Bond film, made $67 million. Sudden Impact was also $67 million. Staying Alive made $64 million. I remember I watched that in the theater. I love Staying Alive. Great movie. Mr. Mom made $64 million also, just a bit under Staying Alive. And at $63 million, in number 10 spot was Risky Business. Real quick, Mr. Mom, that had Michael Keaton. And I know, again, when he started in Batman a few years later, I say a few years later, 6 years later, everyone for Mr. Mom's going to be Batman. I think he did good for what they gave him. But again, those were the top movies of 1983, the highest grossing movies. And that was per Wikipedia. What do you guys think? Did you guys see these movies? I'm sure most of you guys probably saw Return of the Jedi. But yeah, there are a lot of great movies in this list. I know I've seen Risky Business like once or twice. Wasn't a huge fan of it. It was all right. Sudden Impact I saw once. I've seen Octopussy. I'm not sure if I've ever seen Tears of Endearment. I know of it, but yeah, didn't seem like something that would be at my aisle. And also Flashdance I've seen once or twice. Again, it was always on like HBO or Cinemax growing up back in the late 80s. So, but yeah, I love Return of the Jedi. Trading Places was fantastic. War Games awesome. Staying Alive I loved. And Mr. Mom. All great movies in my opinion. Again, as I've mentioned before, I'm a big fan of rap. So these are the rap albums that was released this year. Houdini released their self-titled Houdini album. Love Houdini. Great rap group. The Sugar Hill Gang released Rappin' Downtown. And Curtis Blow released Party Time? With a question mark? love those groups. Awesome groups. The Trends for music. CDs became popular among classical music listeners. Wow. So in 83 is when CDs started becoming popular with a certain group, and eventually it would become the norm for a while. For quite a while, actually. And again, other albums that was released this year. Again, by all means, not all comprehensive lists, just ones that stuck out to me. Sweet Dreams Are Made of This by The Rhythmics. Live Evil by Black Sabbath. Again, that wasn't my jam, but my buddy, my best friend Dean, his brother was into that kind of music, so I mentioned that for him. Grand Funk released What's Funk. Styx released an album called Kilroy Was Here. Again, Styx isn't my jam. They're all right, but they're not my jam. But I wanted to mention this one because Kilroy, I've talked about that before. Again, I remember Kilroy being all over back in the 70s and 80s, and he kind of faded away. I mentioned on an 80s Facebook group here a while back, does anyone remember Kilroy? Whatever happened to that guy? ZZ Top released Eliminator. I mentioned this song earlier, but there's an album called Flashdance with various artists. David Bowie released Let's Dance. Cargo by Men at Work came out. Love some Men at Work. As I talked about before, I met the lead singer, Colin Hay. A buddy of mine, Dean, different Dean than my best friend, Dean. He took me down to Hollywood a couple of times to watch Colin Hay perform at a little club back in the early 2000s, late 90s, somewhere in there. Also this year was You Can't Stop Rock and Roll by Twisted Sister. One of my favorites, Weird Al Yankovic, released a self-titled album, Weird Al Yankovic. Elton John released Too Low for Zero. Again, growing up, I wasn't a big Elton John fan, but as I've gotten older, I've heard some of his songs, and I like his stuff. It's not bad. Also this year, She Works Hard for the Money by Donna Summer. Great song. Bee Gees released Staying Alive, Staying Alive, Staying Alive, as I talked about earlier. Also this month, Wham! Released Fantastic. Kill 'Em All by Metallica. This was Metallica's debut album. Again, wasn't a Metallica fan. I've listened to it some nowadays, but again, my friend Larry, I think he was a big Metallica fan. He liked all that rock and roll and heavy metal, not rock and roll, heavy metal and stuff. So, also a debut album from a young woman named Madonna. She released her album called Madonna. I don't think she ever went anywhere. I think this was her only album. Huey Lewis and the News released Sports. Another debut, Cyndi Lauper released her album called She's So Unusual. And Ozzy Osbourne released Bark at the Moon. I've heard that song several times on this 80s music station I listened to. Again, not a huge Ozzy fan. I had an ex-girlfriend that was a huge fan of Ozzy. The biggest singles from this year. Culture Club released Karma Chameleon. Michael Jackson released Billie Jean. Billie Jean. Anyways. Irene Cara released Flashdance. What a Feeling. David Bowie released Let's Dance. And The Police released Every Breath You Take. So those were the biggest singles of 1983. And that's the music section for 1983. If I missed something, either the movies or music or whatever, send me an email. You can email it to 1983@headspeaks.com. Go ahead and send me an email and let me know what you think. Did I miss anything that you were interested in? Anything that came out this year that I missed or should have mentioned? Let me know. Love to hear from you guys. But that is 1983. So we're going to go ahead and spin the wheel to see what the next year is. And the generator stopped on 1982. So the next time I do one of these segments, we'll be looking at the year 1982. If you want, go ahead and send your thoughts and anything you've got memories of 1982 you may have, send them to 1982@headspeaks.com. Again, you can send any thoughts, any random memories you have of 1982 to 1982@headspeaks.com. We're going to go and dive into the next segment. This next segment is Geeking with Head. During the role-playing games I've played, I'm looking currently at the previous G.I. Joe role-playing game, The Adventure Continues, I played on is a podcast here. Sometimes we get talking and about stuff that's not really game-related. And a lot of times I would put that at the end of the episodes as like blooper reels or extra content. This time we started talking about game mechanics and it evolved into talking about G.I. Joe in general. And I pulled that out and planned on putting it somewhere as extra content, but I never got around to it. So I decided, you know what? I've still got this laying around. I might as well place it here. So this is Comic Talk with myself, Eric Ergen, the Game Master Eric Smith, and one of the other previous guys that used to play with us back when I did the G.I. Joe, The Adventure Continues. So again, this has been sitting around for a little while, but It is what it is.
Yo, Joe! Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Who you gonna call? Thundercats. The Centurions are the visionaries.
I am Dungeon Master, your guide in the realm.
Geeking with Head.
Now I know. And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
Go ahead and take it away, past Aaron.
Well, see, actually, one of the subparts of drone pets is robot.
Right. And that's what I say. So, I mean, drone pets, pet is just just a name.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can have it be a drone, a robot dog, cat, whatever it may be, the hover thing you have right now, the drone you have. It can be almost anything.
So, at what point are we going to have like Squad Zulu, where we all have pets?
Oh, that's something we can work on. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility.
A 4-man, 4-pet.
That's something we'd have to decide on to become, to all make a character with pets, and I'm down with that.
Kind of think of like
Silverback.
Unlike Larry Hama, I don't mind the pets.
Oh, Larry Hama didn't like the pets?
Well, then if you read the comics, the only pets he had in there, he had I think Frida made like one appearance, and then Timber was up in the mountains. He wasn't hanging around the base of Snake Eyes, and he didn't introduce Paula. Yeah, Larry wasn't a fan of the non-regulation, or how you want to phrase it, but he wasn't a fan of the non-military stuff, it seems.
Sure.
Because, like Timber only appeared, occasionally, and that's when Snake Eyes was up in the woods. He never used Polly. Spirit appeared like once. I mean, Freedom's appeared once or twice.
I mean, Polly was Shipwreck is what made that character.
Right. And, he used Law and Order, but that's Order of the military dog. So, yeah, if you look at the G.I. Joe run that Larry did, though, yeah, he stayed away from...
What about for the villains, though? Did he use, like, Crocmaster? I didn't read a lot of comics back then. That's not my basis of knowledge.
Crocmaster did show up occasionally. I don't recall him very much in the comic. I know he was supposedly in charge of security of Cobra Island during the Cobra Island War. But yeah, Crocmaster didn't make a huge appearance. I mean, he had Raptor with his bird showed up like a couple of times.
Well, and Raptor was extra weird, right?
Right. In fact, that was the first G.I. Joe comic I picked up was with Raptor in it.
Oh.
It was the one with Cobra Commander and the new battle armor on the cover.
Okay.
And his son Billy was in the bed behind him, but I didn't know who it was at the time because I wasn't reading the comics, and I knew G.I. Joe from the cartoon. So I was out with my mom and her friends, and after I got done eating, I went next door to the store and was looking around. I saw that and it says Cobra Commander Reborn. I'm like, ooh, I've got to check this out. And from there, well, the addiction was born. But like I say, yeah, Larry wasn't a big fan of the more weird of the G.I. Joe stuff. Somehow he avoided using Cobra Law. I still don't know how he managed that, but...
Well, the comics didn't... As much as, some people would disagree, I don't feel like the comics were as focused on selling the toys, right? The comics' goal was to sell the comics, versus the cartoon, to me, is what sold the toys. And so that's why they had to, introduce new characters, right? That was their whole, hey, everybody's got these ones.
Comic was another way for them to sell the toys. Because that's why every so often Larry would have to introduce new characters, and Larry did such a great job at it. But yeah, Larry had enough. Well, he was there to sell. He was there to help promote the toys, and that's what as you're reading along, you see characters just pop up, and that's hey, there's new toys coming out. But yeah, the cartoon was definitely there for the toys. But that's what the comic was there also for. I think Larry did a better job, and for one, because Larry was the writer for almost the entire run. He had a couple fill-in issues, but for the most part, Larry was G.I. Joe, the Real American Hero. Where the cartoon, they had, different writers and different people, working on it. So you weren't able to get that varied sense, that sense of one big continuity. And also, the cartoons, as we all know, didn't mind straying into the goofy.
Oh, 100%. It was,
That's like on my show. We were always talking about that. No matter how much we bag on the cartoon, comment on the cartoon, we all love it because that was a lot of our first introduction to GI Joe.
Sure, and I gotta feel like a lot of the reason why it gets bagged on is because now we're adults and we're like, oh, how silly was that?
Right.
But the reality is, at the time, we're like, that's amazing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm sure that maybe sure is a strong word, but Cobra Law, while it didn't get a great reception from the fan base even then, I think it would get even a worse reception now.
Probably. I'm one of those. I enjoyed Cobra Law for what it was.
I do too. I thought it was kind of neat. I thought it was shoehorned, but I didn't know that as a kid.
Right.
I didn't know that, oh, wait, they really didn't back any of this up. All of a sudden, Cobra Commander is a different race. Like, there's no buildup of that.
Well, there was that one episode where Dexter caught him eating with his mask off, and he's like, and he made a comment how it's disgusting the way he eats. That could have leaned into it, but
I would just took that as him just not having a lower jaw or something goofy like that.
well, see, Cobra, like I said, I talked with Buzz Dixon on an episode of my podcast, and yeah, Cobra Law wasn't in the original script. He had other plans for the organization of Cobra, but Hasbro said that they need to have, the origins of Cobra. They need to, and that was one of the ideas they came up with. There was a couple different ideas, and Hasbro liked them all, so they kind of smushed them all into one. In fact, said that Cobra Law, or not Chuck, Buzz said that Cobra Law wasn't supposed to be their name of the group. That was a placeholder.
Sure.
Until he thought of something better, but he's like, you careful what you say to the suits, because they heard Cobra Law and they loved it, so Cobra Law it is.
Great name. You're like, oh wait.
Yeah. He's like, no, it's a place. Shit. Right.
I had heard that at some point. I forgot when I heard it, but
See, I couldn't see Cobra Law in the cartoon without thinking, hey, that's Mickey.
Well, there's some of that too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I knew Burgess Meredith from was Rocky movies.
Oh yeah, and nothing wrong with that. Well, I know him from Rocky, and also more to me was the Penguin.
Yeah.
Batman. That's what I knew.
See, that's like my first G.I. Joe was a 12-inch. So.
Right. Yes, I didn't get G.I. Joe until the Real American Hero series.
Oh yeah, I never.
And then my second G.I. Joe was a 6-inch. The Super Joe.
Right.
Was crazy as hell.
Yeah, I never did any of it.
Spent the summer with my aunt, who had just given birth to my first cousin, and I helped her around the house, and I babysat a little bit. And as a reward for that, she took me to Kmart. This is probably 83, 84. And I got to pick, 20 or 30 bucks worth of toys. And
that's a lot back then.
Yeah, exactly. And I couldn't decide on any one thing, so I just went a mishmash. I got a couple of He-Man, and I picked up 2 figures from Crystar, the Crystal Warrior, and I also picked up the Gen 1 Breaker and the Gen 1 Snake Eyes
Very nice.
from the G.I. Joe line. And that kind of lit the fuse. But those are the very first 2 action figures I ever bought. Weren't even swivel arm. It was even before that.
Nice. I have no idea what my first Joe was. I gotta feel like it was a hand-me-down from the guy upstairs. My parents owned a duplex and we lived in the lower. The guy upstairs had G.I. Joes, and I think, yeah.
Oh, I thought you meant God was dropping you G.I. Joes.
I mean, maybe that was the play. That was the play. God said, Eric shall have G.I. Joes, and he sent the upstairs neighbor boy. Boy, it might be Firefly. If I really think hard. Like, it's somebody with a ski mask on. I know that much. And it wasn't Beachhead. And that's when I just decided all G.I. Joes needed to be ninjas.
Well, you're not far off.
So then I liked all the, even the snow guys, like Snow Serpent and stuff like that, were some of my favorites too. Because, he kind of had a ski mask on like a ninja.
I got an uncle that's 5 years older than me, so my favorite times growing up was when he decided he was getting old and gave me all his...
I had a couple cousins who were not older than me. And so when they decided to hand down all their stuff, they handed it down to my even younger cousins. They jumped over me because I was too close in age. I was only like 2-3 years younger than them. By the time they knew they were done with their toys, it was theoretically done for me also. Very sad times. I got their clothes, though. It was the hand-me-downs I got from those cousins.
That'll show them.
Well, yay. I would have preferred the Joes. It also might be why I don't care about clothes. Same way some other people do.
Hope you enjoyed that conversation we had there. Again, that's from, I don't know how long ago, honestly, we recorded that. I did not take note of when I recorded that. But anyways, that was Geeking With Head and some G.I. Joe talk. Some follow-up comments to our conversation we had, because again, it's been a while back, so I've got some actually updates to that. We talked about Larry, again, basically G.I. Joe, the comic, was a advertisement for the toys, and that's why Larry had to use, all the new figures that came out, all the new vehicles. And as we mentioned in there, Larry did not use Cobra Law in the comic. We didn't know why at the time, but since then, good buddy and fellow Joe of mine that's on my G.I. Joe Real American Headcast, Jared Albrick, the art cell artist, he actually talked to Larry at a convention, and I talked to Jared beforehand. I'm like, well, if you get a chance to talk to Larry, find out how come he didn't use Cobra Law, how that happened. So, again, Larry talked with my buddy Jared, and Jared asked him, he's like, you used all these other characters. You had, you used Raptor, you used, the Pogo, and all this other kind of silly stuff. Why didn't you have to use Cobra Law? And apparently Larry's answer was he refused. Apparently the story goes, Hasbro came to him and said, well, here's your new characters you need to use. They presented him Cobra Law. Larry looked at that and said, no, I refuse to do that. They said, well, no, you have to. It's one of the new toys coming out. We need them in the comic. We need to advertise this. And he's like, no, I'm not. That's stupid. I'm not going to do it. If you want to use them, you have to have someone else write the comic. Oh, come on, Larry. You can put these in. No. If you want to use it, I refuse. You have someone else write it. I'm not going to do that. And as we saw, apparently Larry had the bigger stick because Cobra Law never appeared back in the original run of G.I. Joe. So I just thought that was funny that, Larry just like, no, I refuse to use them. It's stupid, and I'm not going to do it. And again, Larry was a big dog. He made G.I. Joe what it is, so they bowed down and pulled Cobra Law out of the comic. And there was also, Eric, I think it was, said that, you couldn't even use, they didn't use Cobra Law back in the comic. He said you couldn't get away with it now. Contraire Eric. Since that conversation, Skybound, an imprint of, I believe it's Image, has released a new G.I. Joe comic. And I'm behind on my reading, but I read the Cobra Commander miniseries, and they are behind Cobra Commander there. He did come from Cobra Law. They had Gobulus. They had Nemesis Enforcer. So actually, yes, they actually did get away with using Cobra Law in the new comics in current times. So I thought that was pretty amazing. In fact, I know in our role-playing game, the Energon Protocols, Eric has brought in a precursor to Nemesis Enforcer that we've called Nana Enforcer. So more on that. And to listen to us play the Renegade Studios G.I. Joe role-playing game, check out G.I. Joe, the Energon Protocols, here on the Headcast Network. Again, available at headcast.headspeaks.com. It's a part of the G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero podcast. Check it out. It comes out monthly. We play the game right now every other week, but I'm releasing as a monthly podcast as a part of the G.I. Joe franchise. I've got G.I. Joe, A Real American Real American Headcast. I've got Bravo Team, which is right now we're currently looking at the special missions, and we're interspacing with other stuff. I think probably the Order of Battle right now. And then the third show I have on there is the Energon Protocol, where we play the G.I. Joe Renegade Studios role-playing game. We're having a lot of fun. We've got 14 game sessions played, and I've just released episode 4 of the game. So definitely check it out and let me know what you think. But I think that's going to do it for this episode of Head Speaks. Again, join us next month for episode 84. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing yet. I know next time I do a retrospect of the 80s, we will be looking at 1982. And I know that, What's in Head's Longbach is coming back soon. I've made an executive decision, since this is my show, and we're going to be looking at Animal Man. I'm currently in talks with another podcaster to have a fellow co-host on while I talk about Animal Man. I'm basically looking at the Grant Morrison run from DC Comics. It started in 1988 or 1989, somewhere around there, and ran, the Grant Morrison issues ran for 26 issues. The book kept going, but it was hit or miss after that for me. So I plan on looking at the first 26 issues of the Animal Man run from DC Comics in the late 80s. We're going to start off probably with a in quotes, the 0 episode, talking a little bit about the origins of Animal Man, what came before, where we know him from, and then we'll follow it up. I'm still working on the formatting of it, if I'm going to do 1 issue a month or a couple issues. But here in the next couple of months, be looking for What's in Head's Long Box as I start talking about Animal Man. And be sure to check out the rest of my shows on the network. We have, as I talked about, G.I. Joe. I've talked about that several times already now. We also have Task Force X, which is coming near an end. I started out looking at the Suicide Squad and Checkmate comics from DC Comics. The Checkmate book finished, so I'm still looking at the Suicide Squad. But yeah, I'm coming up to the end of that one. Only a couple more episodes of that left. And also the Starman Adventure Show. Again, that started off as the Starman Manhunter Adventure Hour, but I finished up with the Manhunter portion. So now I'm looking at the Will Payton Starman. I'm finishing up that. And I'm coming up on issue 50. Either this month or next month, I'll be releasing issue 50 of the Starman Adventure Show. And I believe in that 50th episode will be the last episode of the series. I'm going to do the last 2 episodes and a little follow-up talk. So it'll be a double size or so episode, but that'll end there. And then I also have, it's currently on hiatus while we get things figured out, but the wife and I do the Starbright Project, looking at the Quantum Leap TV show. Again, we started looking at the original Quantum Leap show, me being an old pro, plus another friend of mine from Australia that's another pro, longtime listeners, or viewers, I guess. And my wife, never having seen the show, got her input. We did the first season, and then like 7 or 8 episodes of the second season, and then NBC released a new series of Quantum Leap, a relaunch, if you will. So we stopped to talk about that, and we did the first 8 episodes, and we've kind of had a hold on that because my daughter's in band, and my wife is the band booster president, so we got busy doing band stuff, and we didn't get time to record for a while. And right now, we're still kind of retooling the show, figuring out whether we want to keep going with the new stuff, but we're looking at probably jumping back to the old stuff because Michelle's not quite as happy with the newer show. She didn't not like it, but she really loved the old show. So we're probably going to jump back into the old show. So keep watching, coming back soon on the Headcast Network, the Starbright Project. And I think that does it for me. Thank you very much for listening. And remember, until next time, Head has spoken. Thank you for joining us on another great episode of Head Speaks. I can also be found rambling on other Headcast Network shows, such as the Task Force X Headcast, where I cover all the appearances of the Suicide Squad and Checkmate comic books from the late 80s, early 90s, over on G.I. Joe, a Real American Headcast, where me and my guest hosts look back at the comic book and TV series from the 80s. And in addition, we also have Bravo Team, where we look at other G.I. Joe related paraphernalia. And over on the Starman Adventure Show, where I reread the Will Payton Starman comics and talk about them, once again, from the late 80s. In addition, myself and my wife Michelle, along with our friend from the land down under, Hayden McQueenie, talks about the TV show Quantum Leap monthly over on the Starbright Project. All of the Headcast Network shows can be found on your favorite podcatcher or at my home on the internet, which is at headcast.headspeaks.com. Over on Facebook, X, and Instagram, look for Headcast Network. And please feel free to email your bitches, moans, and gripes to head@headspeaks.com. Also, feel free to email any compliments you have. If you want to record a message, you can send it to me at head@headspeaks.com, and I'll play it on the air. And be sure to join us next time for another fun-filled Headcast from your friendly neighborhood brother Head. And be sure to tell a friend. Until next time, I'll see you in the funny pages.